I want to make sure that that this is legit. I don't want to be, pranked. Yeah, it's a really interesting story. It goes back to 1968. So my grandmother gives me a Hot Wheels car, and it was the Ford GT40. Fast forward, you go through adolescence, and then you become a car guy. You didn't have the means to do anything, but you had the dream. And that's why I called my channel GT Dreamer, because we all dream, right? If you're a car kid, you're always dreaming of this car and that car, and how can I get this car, and how do I get that car? What do I need to do professionally to be able to afford this hobby that I have in my head? That's the image that I want to portray to people. It's like, hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it. We're going now to 2003. The most I had ever spent on a car was 30 grand. That's just the way it was. And Ford announces their centennial with the Ford GT, right? And I'm like, no, I can't believe this. And it was just like this sudden, I have to have this car. That's just it. And it was just one of those things where no matter what happened, I was going to get that car. 2 years later, they started selling the car. And I remember being on this website called FordGTprices.com. And they would monitor what it's sold for, what are people asking, what's going on with pricing. And in the beginning, it was like $350,000, $450,000. The original ones that started coming up for auction were ridiculously priced. And the sticker was only like $150 at the time. I kept tracking those prices until one day I said, that's it, I'm done. I showed up at a dealership and there were two cars, a white blue and a blue white. And so we were negotiating with the manager, and it just so happened that the CEO of the company was there that day. So he came by to meet me, and we started, just casually talking about the car. And he said, well, what did you think of it, when you drove it? And I'm like, no, they didn't let me drive it. And he turns to the manager and says, how do you expect someone to spend, this amount of money and not be able to drive a car? So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to drive this car. And I got to tell you, there was two moments where I knew that hook had caught on. And one of them was the commercial Ford put out for the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember or not. It was The One. It was titled The One. It was a red Ford GT going around a racetrack. And it was just like the most fascinating commercial I had ever seen in my entire life. And it was just like, oh, that's it. Want became need. The second time was when I took that car out from the dealership, and we just went around the block, and it was just like, that's it. I mean, it was just like, it's lights are out. We took a turn, and I took a little bit sauced, and that back end just skidded just ever so slightly, from neutral. And it was just like, oh my God, this is something else. And it was love at first sight. 2 days later, I had the car in my house, and it's been with me ever since. And I think as long as I can keep that car, I'm going to keep that car. When Ford announced that they're going to come out with a new Ford GT, it was like a bombshell. I mean, it rocked the Ford GT forum, which I'm a member of. What's going to happen? What is it going to cost? Who's going to get it? How many are they going to make? And it created a lot of tension, and it was absolutely normal. There's a limited supply. There's so many of us, original Ford GT owners, limited supply. What's going to happen? Somebody's going to get disappointed. I think Ford did a bang-up job with the application process. I think it was very Apple-like. I think it brought a lot of good publicity to the company, and it created a lot of interest. And I think there was 6,500 fully completed applications for the time 500 cars. We went to Le Mans. We were part of the entire Ford family. And let me tell you something. There's no other automotive company where the family members huddle with the enthusiast. That doesn't happen anywhere else. To a person, everybody in the Ford family, Edsel, Henry Ford III, William, they're all so caring. I think they're grateful to have all this love from so many people. And it shows in the way that that they relate to you and how much time they take. to spend with us. And I remember after the victory, when they left, Victory Lane, they came up to where we were in the Ford Hospitality area, and they couldn't have been more happy and proud to share it with us. They grabbed microphones and they started telling us how it was and how they felt. It was just a wonderful moment. It was a kumbaya moment. Funny enough, we left there, and I remember asking my wife, "What do you think my chances are of getting a Ford GT?" And she's like, "I feel bad for you. You're not going to get a Ford GT." And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of feel the same way." And it's interesting because a couple of weeks after we came back from Le Mans, I was actually alone walking by myself around the block. And if you ever see where I live, it's an oval, right? So I'm on one end of the oval, and there are no streetlights. I'm walking along this oval, and I just happened to look in Instagram, and one of my friends from the forum, Carbauer, he posted he got selected for a Ford GT, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's awesome, Carl!" So I remember commenting that, and then from there I went to the forum on Tapatalk. So I'm looking at this thread that's just blowing up. I mean, everybody's like, "I got one, and I got selected," and there was so much enthusiasm and to a certain degree apprehension because I hadn't been notified at the time, right? So I'm like, wait a minute, if they've got an email, that means that I got an email one way or the other. So, maybe I should check my email. And I'm like, it was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I don't want to get disappointed, but the desire to know is so incredible that I'm like, okay, that's it. I grabbed my phone and I'm starting to look, I'm looking at it. And there it was, Ford. Clicked on it and it says, "Congratulations, you've been selected for a Ford GT," and blah, 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 blah. And I still have it. I think it was June 27th or 28th. 2016. It was such a buoyant moment. But the funny part about it was that I kept walking, right? And I'm like answering people, and I went back, so I kept walking. And then next thing you know, I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't recognize where I'm at. I had kept walking along the road, and instead of going around the oval, I went off of one of the spurs, and I'm like, where the hell am I? Until I got to one of the houses, and I'm like, okay, all right, I think I figured it out now. But it was just like an out-of-body experience. It was really, really incredible. And I remember going back home and seeing the kids, and I'm like, I got one. You're not going to believe it. I got one. And it was just like, what? It was just like, it was totally unexpected. It was just euphoria. As a car enthusiast, you got to think about this. You were among the first 500 people selected worldwide to own an instant classic. I went to the factory to see it in skeleton form. When you're able to see how they packaged the car, it's fascinating. They've put so much tech into this car. It blows your mind. It's just as simple as that. The transmission is paddle shift transmission. It's state of the art, double clutch. The suspension has never been seen in any car like that. It's just a race car for the road. And I know that a lot of people say that, but this is the only time where you can actually see that it really is a race car. All carbon fiber, so it's made 100% out of carbon fiber, except for the certain pieces of the aluminum crash barrier, and that's it. Every single panel has your VIN number on it, and that's another thing that was quite humbling, is that they selected me to have VIN number 68. 68 being the 68 Heritage Edition, and just to put that in perspective, the 66 Heritage Edition was the black car with the number 2 on it. Number 66 was given to Billy Johnson, which is one of their factory racers. In 2018, they gave VIN number 67 to the family of Dan Gurney. And it's, like, how do you go from a factory racer, a man like Gurney, and then to me? So it's quite humbling. I've got to say that as a community, the Ford GT Forum is the single biggest reason why I have a Ford GT. And I can say without any reservation that Dave Bannister, that heads the 4GT forum has created a place for all of us. And we don't always get along. It's like any forum, there's, different characters out there. But I think we do the best job of any other forum out there. And we're a welcoming place. We're a wonderful place where, people can come and share their enthusiasm and gain a lot of knowledge about the cars. The Heritage Edition selection is pretty cool because you're not only you already have an allocation. So what they do is they say, okay, they look at the time frame. They say, well, we're going to do X number of cars. These are the people that fall within that production window. Let's ask them if they're interested in a Heritage or a Carbon, and they grade you originally. Everybody has a score. They don't tell you what that is. They don't say much about it, but they allocate these cars according to some kind of, scale. And so basically when I got the email, I said, hell yes, I want, the Heritage Edition. It's a classic, racing livery. Who wouldn't want that? Well, I think the original email may have been in March, and then in May, I get a phone call. So I get this phone call, and it was a 18888 number, and I never pick up the phone when it's like that. But for some reason that day I did. And so I said hello, and they said, well, this is the 4GT concierge, and, we want to talk to you about the possibility of getting you a Heritage Edition. We just want to make sure that if you were selected for it, this is what it's going to be. They give you a price. And I'm like, yeah, I thought it was these two friends of ours from the forum that are practical jokers. So I'm like, they're probably recording me. This is going to go viral on the forum, amongst themselves through text messaging. I'm not going to be a participant to this. So I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Right. And then I'm like, the conversation ended. I'm like, did this just happen? Or is this these two practical jokers? I got to call back. So I called back, and the lady came out. I'm like, look, I know we just talked, but I want to make sure that that this is legit. I don't want to be, pranked. So she's, no, Mr. Santana, you're being considered for a Heritage Edition, and it's, you're going to have more information down the road, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, yes, I want one.
Most of us carry around wallets that look a lot more like suitcases than like a toolkit for what we actually need for our day. The Ridge makes a line of wallets and bags that help you to carry exactly what you need and nothing you don't. So leave the junk at home and go to ridge.com/VINwiki and use the code VINwiki at checkout for a discount. Let them know how much you appreciate their support of the VINwiki channel.